Welcome to Research Renaissance, presented by the Karen Toffler Charitable Trust. We invite you into the stories, struggles, and breakthroughs shaping the future of human health. From cutting-edge brain science to discoveries transforming how we heal, adapt, and thrive, we explore the ideas that matter and the people behind them. Together, we look across diseases, technology, and research fields to understand not just what is changing, but why it matters for patients, families, and the future we all share. Join us as we uncover new insights, spark collaboration, and illuminate the science that can improve our lives. So welcome to Research Renaissance. I'm Deborah Westphal, your host and guide through the fascinating future of health science. Joining me today is Dr. Art Caplan, a leading bioethicist and the head of the section of medical ethics at NYU Langone Health. We'll discuss Art's focus on ethical challenges raised by modern medicine, public health, and emerging technologies. So welcome, Art.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is going to be fascinating because you have a very different perspective. You have spent a career at really the crossroads of medicine, morality, public health. First of all, what drew you to this medical ethics, and rather than just kind of any academic subject that you could have gone into?
Well, when I was a little kid, 6, I was one of the last people in America to get polio. So when I was in the hospital, incurable disease, it affected my legs and my neck. I did not have it in my chest or my diaphragm or ribs. That's when you wound up in the iron lung, where you had to have mechanical support. But I knew what was going on. And it certainly got me thinking about ethics in healthcare, because they didn't tell us the truth. Kids would die and they would say they went home, but we knew they couldn't have gone home because they were too sick. We couldn't see visitors except very restricted visiting. I'm talking like every other day, an hour. That's all they let people in. It was just the way it was, but I didn't make any sense to me. We had treatments that were given to us, mainly heat packs. The idea was heat would somehow help our muscles. I'm not sure it hurt, but I don't think it did anything. But again, they were very optimistic about talking about this, whereas all I did was sweat a lot from getting in these heat pack treatments. I had to go to rehab medicine for a couple of years to learn to walk again, and that also raised ethics issues. Who was treated well, who didn't? The doctors and the PT and physical therapists people they didn't like some of the people. They weren't very cooperative, and they got sort of neglected. You could see it even at age 8, 9, 10 for me. So all of that got me thinking early about ethics in medicine. Later, I was a philosophy major and pre-med at Brandeis University near Boston. Got caught up in a lot of the ethics questions of that time: Vietnam War, civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, everybody's rights. And Brandeis was a good environment for debating all this, arguing about all this, not in class, but outside of class, a little bit like college kids today are arguing about ICE and other political issues. And that certainly got me primed a little bit to think about ethics. I did go off for a year to Columbia Medical School, and when I was there, I saw all kinds of issues. Babies being put in the corner because they had handicaps and allowed to die because the parents didn't want them treated. And I thought, gee, I'm not sure that's the right thing to do, even though I got what the parents were saying. We didn't have many kidney dialysis machines, so there were lots of fights about who was going to get kidney dialysis. And I had no input into that. I was just watching all this. First-year medical student is nobody. But I went to the dean of students and said, why don't we talk about these ethics issues? They're really interesting. When I had that philosophy background and the other orientation for my own upbringing, he said, this is funny, you talk about those issues with your attendings. Those are the senior doctors who are, in charge of patient care. I am not going to go talk to my senior attending about his ethics. I can tell you that's the fastest way to be the ex-medical student or the person who's going to be cleaning up vomit in the basement at 2 in the morning. Anyway, finally decided I'm going to go take a master's degree in ethics in the where I was at Columbia in the philosophy department. Philosophy department thought that was ridiculously stupid because they didn't really care about applied ethics. They were interested in theories of what makes an ethical theory true, not solving particular problems. But long story short, I really got interested, finished my PhD in philosophy, never went back to medical school, but was invited back to teach there at Columbia, my first jobs. So that's sort of the history. I saw things when I was on the floors that got me thinking and questioning. And at the time, there wasn't any medical ethics. It was sort of
Yeah.
a in-house discussion. Senior people decided what to do and did it.
Were there other people that felt like you? Did you have peers that you would chit chat over coffee about some of the things that they were seeing too? Is this kind of common?
I did have others, not many, but there were some. And I talked with a number of the students, my peer class. But I also had met in the philosophy connection a person who was doing history, and they were studying the Tuskegee experiment, where black men were not given medicine, even though they knew it would cure their syphilis, and they were lied to. He went on, Alan Brandt, to become the head of the history of science at Harvard, where he is to this day. But he and I were in the same Columbia PhD programs and talking about things. There were some others, Betty Levin, Ann Dill, other people in sociology, Kim Hopper, who was a theology student at the Union Theological Seminary. But we knew each other through our PhD connections and found each other. Vanessa Merton, who teaches law at Pace these days. All of these people were great support, did some work on tracking a case that turned out to be very interesting, a guy with a head injury and what happened to him after he was rescued, but things didn't go well at home because he was so disabled and they didn't have the resources to deal with him. So yes, there were some
Yeah.
support. And I found out by accident when I was teaching my little course, which by the way didn't go well at the beginning because it was all lecture. Students didn't like it. When I switched to cases, then the med students liked medical ethics a lot better, early experiments. But the dean of students, who kept praying for me to return to med school, along with my mother, said, I see there's a meeting on ethics in this new area of genetics in Boston. Do you want to go? Because I'll let you go. And he gave me a plane ticket, and I went up there. And on the way back, I sat next to a guy named Dan Callahan. Dan Callahan was just creating a new think tank to look at ethics issues in medicine called the Hastings Center, which still exists to this day. It's probably the preeminent independent bioethics think tank. And he hired me, even though I was just nobody. And I was like a research assistant there, ran the Xerox machine, ordered lunch, that kind of everything. And eventually I worked my way up there to become the second in command, the associate director. But that was accidental, just
Yeah.
serendipity.
That's incredible. So the time frame of this, is this the 80s or
This is the 70s. So I
the
wound up
70s?
going to the mid school about 77. I wound up starting at the Hastings Center about 1980.
Yeah. So tell us about the Hastings, the center, and then ended up kind of, because you said you were there at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And I imagine, I think you're probably being very, saying that you started at the bottom, but you worked your way at the top. You were a part of the growth of this organization, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So tell me about that, and how did you attract people? How did you get people to listen? Because today there's still people that don't listen, unfortunately, but there's a lot more emphasis and a lot more questions. So what was that like back then?
It's a great question. Partly it'll take up the rest of our time together to answer it because it's so interesting as a tale because it's the building of a field. And I was there at the beginning of bioethics, and I'm still here, whatever it is, 50 years later or something, watching a mature area, which does have influence. Not always on everything, but yes, you're absolutely right, Deborah. It's shaped human experimentation rules. It's helped create the ideas of when we die with brain death. It's helped create living wills and advanced directives that many people use to guide their care at end of life. Distribution systems for organ transplants, which I helped write the rules for a long time ago in the 80s. So, yes, it's had a lot of, and many, many more areas where it's had influence. When we got there, it turned out that Dan, the guy who was trying to create this think tank, which started, by the way, in his bedroom, that's how primitive things were. Then somebody opened up a house for us. I'll tell you a little funny story. It's called the Burke Estate, and it was in the town of Hastings on Hudson, New York, which is just about 15 miles north of New York City, and that's the Hastings Center. But it was formerly owned by Billy Burke, and it was empty, and the town didn't know what to do with it. And Billy Burke was the good witch in The Wizard of Oz. And many people originally came to the house, and we would think, oh, they're interested in medical ethics, but they just wanted to find out about Billy Burke. And then when we said she's not here and we're here, we do, and they were like, yeah, well, goodbye. So not always influential. When people began to realize that this place existed, we didn't really have to go out of our way to get thinkers to come because we were the only game in town, and they came from all over the U.S. A professor at Princeton who did religion, a professor of medicine at Cornell who had nobody to talk to but was really interested in end-of-life issues, and law professors, and they were out there, but they didn't have a community, and we became that. The next thing we did was we created a journal, the Hastings Center Report, which is still the main bioethics journal today, and so that gave us a mouthpiece and a megaphone. Then we tried to get articles put into mainstream medical journals. I wrote an early one on ethics of genetic screening for Tay-Sachs disease and sickle cell, the pros and cons of going out in the community and trying to tell people whether they were at risk, which had benefits, but also could hurt their insurance or that maybe they didn't want to know, and other things like that. I remember to this day when it got accepted in the New England Journal of Medicine, Dan and I looked at each other and said, we're legit. The docs are paying attention. We're going to get somewhere with this. And I'll tell you what my contribution was when I was there in the 80s. I thought, this is great. We're going to have to build an academic reputation. We're going to have to build publications. We're going to have to show that we can give analyses that make a difference to what policy. But we also should be public. Why are we doing this if we're not going to talk to the world? Don't patients need to know this? Or shouldn't we try to influence legislators or people outside the world of the university? So I'll plead guilty. I started to write op-eds for newspapers. I decided I was going to teach a course at the Columbia Journalism School. They had a course on science journalism, and I gave some lectures on this new ethics stuff. That gave me a first crew of reporters who kept calling back when they tried an artificial heart or an early baboon heart transplant or the first test tube baby, Louise Brown in England. And they didn't know where to go, but this guy was out there in this Hastings place. That began to give us a public face, and that has continued ever since. I'll plead guilty. I'm probably the most public face person in bioethics, but by design. It's not an accident. I thought, we got to what's the point of having a living will if nobody knows that it exists or they don't know about it? We got to find ways to let you know you could choose to fill one out or pick a surrogate decision maker. And we were getting, big cases, Karen Ann Quinlan, Nancy Cruzan, other high visibility cases about what to do when people were unconscious or couldn't communicate. And could we shut off their food and water? Those really drove me to want to get public attention to use those cases to talk about who was in charge and who made decisions and so on. So that problem, in some ways, I guess I'm the most responsible for dragging bioethics into the public sphere. Not all my academic friends like that, but I just thought it was important.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because sometimes when you hear for like just people that aren't in it, ethics, debates, there's strong opinions about what's right, what's wrong, but they don't go any deeper. And sometimes that feels like it's real abstract. The whole, like you're talking about these cases that, as you're going through them, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that one and I remember that one. How do you, and philosophy is abstract. People, why would you want to take philosophy in college? And, you sit around and debate things, but there's no resolution. Where do you start with this? And how do you look at ethics around, not right and wrong, but around some of these really impossible choices that have to be made for real people?
So that's a great question. It is one of the nagging issues that always surrounds bioethics. I entered the field. Remember, I came from pre-med science, and in a way, I have a more practical orientation than the average philosophy professor. And I don't have a lot of patience for somebody saying, as occasionally a ethics professor will say to me, until we have the correct moral theory nailed down in agreement, you can't do any applied stuff. I think that's silly. What I believe is true is that we don't need the perfect theory. We need a good enough theory, or one that gets us to a better place than where we started. Perfect? I'll leave that to divinity students or something. That doesn't interest me, never did. So I think, what you want to do is first you have to know what the ethical issues are in the actual practice of medicine. So you do have to spend time either talking to clinicians about how they manage patients and what problems they face so you know what's going on, or scientists to say, what's the next technology? Today it would be learning about AI. It might be learning about different kinds of gene engineering, but you've got to stay abreast to know, well, what are their issues? You don't want to start with theories about in the abstract. You want to know on the ground. Think of it this way. There's physics and there's engineering. And I think bioethics is engineering. I don't care about the pure theories of physics if I need to build a bridge. I just got to get enough principles down so it doesn't fall down and it can carry the weight. So that's kind of always how I've thought about what bioethics is, more akin to engineering, practical sciences like agriculture, veterinary medicine, where you've got a problem and you're going to solve it, not can I come up with theories of the universe that tell me what the ultimate principles are. There's nothing wrong with trying. Not my gig. Not. So I want to know what the law says because I want to know what we're up against or if something needs to change. I'm very interested in what the anthropologists and social scientists will tell me about popular opinion, where people at on an issue, because if they're at a place that I think is good and defensible, then we don't have to worry about it. But if they're not, say vaccines, I think the public opinion is slipping away from supporting them. As a person with polio, I'm not agreeing with that at all, and I want to change that. But, I don't need a universal theory of morality to come up with an argument about why you should vaccinate your kid and why we should mandate it. I need just enough principles to get us to a better place. So I would say there was a developmental psychologist many years ago, 70s maybe, wrote books about parenting. His name was Winnicott, and he was influential, kind of like Dr. Spock or one of those guys of the day. But he had advice for women who were worried about taking care of their kids, not dads, because dads didn't do that at that time. And what he said was, you don't have to be a perfect mom, you just have to be a good enough one. That's what I think about bioethics. I don't have to get it perfect. I just have to be good enough so that somebody would say, well, there's still problems. Okay. And it's not the best. Okay. Or it didn't work for me. If it worked for 90% of the people, Good enough for me.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought up vaccinations, and it's, some of these discussions around ethics are very controversial. And it's interesting to me because I don't remember vaccinations being as controversial as they are now. Where does that social, you said is kind of slipping. Where is that, maybe that convergence with trust or lack of trust
Yeah.
in, where something that was, a few years ago was very, I remember getting the polio shot, lining us up very young in the hallways. My mom had polio when she was a kid. But I got the shot. We lined up in the hallway. You just marched into the nurses. There was no question.
Yeah, they
You
just
did
say,
it.
which arm do you want this shot?
Which arm do and then you get the
You
little
want to hold
scar,
your
right?
teddy bear or not? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. And there was not all this kind of debate. Where does that fit with the
I can
society
explain it to
trust?
you, I think, as clear as day, and you're going to laugh. COVID destroyed support in vaccination.
Yeah.
I think people expected the vaccine to save them, and 1 million people died, even though a vaccine was produced and helped and prevented millions of deaths. Didn't wasn't in the arsenal when this mystery virus appears. That virus shuts down the world, shuts it down. People very disappointed. They're told America has great public health, America has great science, America has great doctors, and yet I've been locked in my house for a year. Can't go to
Hmm.
work, can't socialize, kids can't go to school. I'm losing my job. The restaurants are closing. It's COVID. COVID and the pandemic destroyed faith, trust in medicine and science. It's not often said. I'm one of the few people I think who's writing about this a little bit. But if you look at, by the way, any deadly epidemic, pandemic, it always has this legacy of many years of distrust in whoever the authorities are, religious leaders, guys wearing the funny bird heads, you name it. They don't trust them after the Black Death or whatever it is. And we went through that too. So COVID opened the door to disinformation, trust in people who are, influencers, but may just be full of hot air or nonsense, alternate voices. Or I told you so voices, like RFK Jr., who's like, I told you vaccines were bad. And, well, we went through COVID and he sort of leveraged that. And I think incorrectly, but they did. So I'm going to tell you, I think we're still in the wake of COVID. That's what the MAHA movement is. It's almost the Make America Healthy Again movement under Kennedy and Oz and those people, McCary at the FDA. They're basically backlash against mainstream medicine. By the time you say Anthony Fauci, this leading NIH scientist, is guilty and responsible for COVID, you've got a lot of COVID backlash.
Yeah. So if we've done this before and it's, after pandemics and the trust, how do we learn, how does the bioethics ethics inform that says, look, if we go through these things and we do what we, maybe have always done with communication or, policies or whatever, we're going to have a backlash that may even be worse than what the pandemic was. How does it inform an administration or policy or leaders that say, hey, we've been here before. We know that this has a real downside when we behave this way or dictate
Yeah.
this or put in policy. Let's don't do that. Like where is that balance there?
Well, once you start to lose the trust, it's a little hard to say don't do that. You're just going to be up against a loss of trust, a loss of faith. But there were some things that we saw that I think need correction. For example, our public health authorities, CDC and otherwise, in the middle of COVID, tended to say do this or do that just based on their authority. They were like, we're the experts, stay home, Initially, they might have said things like, wipe down your packages because it's not airborne. Oh, wait a minute, it is airborne. Never mind. Now wear a mask or improve your ventilation. We have a vaccine and you're not going to get sick. Oh, the virus changed. Now you might get sick, but you won't get as sick. They didn't manage shifts in what I'll say the virus was doing or the information we were learning about it on the fly very well. Science is fallible. Science has to adjust as nature changes or they learn more. And they didn't explain that very well at all. People, in fact, got mad at science for changing messages. And it's like, no, 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 that's what they're supposed to do. You're not ashamed of it. It's good. If you didn't do that, you'd be in the realm of ideology or religion where it doesn't matter what somebody says, you think the Bible is true. End of story. Nothing would refute it. You can even have inconsistent lessons in the Bible about creation or what. I don't care. I'm buying it. But that's not science. They didn't explain it. They tended to lean hard on their authority as we're in charge, do this. And you can't do that. You've got to explain why you think something ought to be done, what the chances are that it won't work, that sort of thing. And we should be doing that in our messaging at all points at the state and national level. Don't just command people, stay home, no school. Tell them why, tell them what the evidence is for it, back it up. We also had crummy science communication. Remember, I told you I'm a big guy on communication. And some of it is a skill that people have. I'm not saying everybody should be out. I admit a number of scientists that I wouldn't let out of the lab and wouldn't let talk to anybody, actually. Although very good at their work, but that's not their shtick. We need more people who can communicate. And there were very few taking on misinformation during COVID and after. It's a handful. And I can tell you within medicine and science and even bioethics, we don't teach people how to communicate at all.
Yeah.
Nor do we say you have a responsibility. I started a little program in NYU past couple of years. It's just called Give One Talk. It's very simple. If you're a scientist, a doctor, public health, nurse, dentist, social worker, PT, or student in any of these areas, give one talk in the community a year. Not too onerous. Go to the Rotary, go to your synagogue, go to your 4-H club, go to the PTA. The misinformers do. The people who are MAGA show up at the school board and everywhere else. We've got to fight disinformation and loss of trust locally. I do it. I try to give talks sometimes by web to, a PTA group in Oregon, or sometimes I'm doing it around where I live in Connecticut in person, but you got to do it. And we don't do it. I think science and medicine, academia generally, too much in the ivory tower, our culture is you do your research, you publish it in journals, and then things are going to change. Publishing in journals is going to change something?
Yeah.
No, it won't.
Especially in today's world, as you're talking, I'm thinking, there's, how is the world different than when you started, growing the Hastings, organization there, and it's, we do communicate. It's over communication.
Yeah.
It is 24/7, 365. All sorts of channels.
International.
And most of the channels. Internationally. And a lot of the channels are 30 seconds to 60 seconds or, 150 words. And so how do you get that? How are you thinking about this communication?
Well, again, that's exactly where the training is needed.
Yeah.
When I came into Hastings, I think I mentioned, I wrote an op-ed for a couple of newspapers. Then I had a newspaper in St. Paul, Minnesota, the Pioneer Press. The editor said to me, why don't we do this once a month as a regular feature, as an op-ed? Well, the St. Paul Pioneer Press is probably dead as a doornail by now, and nobody really is going to read a printed op-ed. It's a different world, as you said.
Right.
So you got to learn how to exist in that world. I just finished an op-ed today that just came out on polio that I'm going to put in the Atlanta. It's coming out soon in the Atlanta Journal Constitution. That paper doesn't exist. It's all online. And when
Mm-hmm.
I get it, I know that I'm going to get a link, and I'm going to circulate the link myself. I'm not waiting for them to do it. I mean, it's nice that people in Atlanta will read it. So I already know some tricks.
Yeah.
In a certain world, in the world today, I don't have to publish in the New York Times. I can publish in the Ridgefield, Connecticut Daily Blather. As long as I've got that electronic link, I can promote it. I know where to send it. I keep a list of influential people or influencers to send it to. Do they use it all the time? I don't know, and I don't care. I'm just part of that new world. But again, you've got to learn it. You've got to learn how to write those things. If I don't catch your attention in the first three sentences, academics are used to saying, well, let me have a little wind up here and I'll write a couple of pages about the history of polio and how happy we were, as you said, when the shots appeared. And then I want to take on the idea that we should stop giving polio shots because it's not around. You better lead with, if you stop giving polio shots, you know what's going to happen? Your kid is going to be paralyzed. You know what I mean? You don't start
Yeah.
with a. So this is what I'm talking about: training, understanding, knowing, and I would even say understanding. I saw a story today: Washington Post, massive cuts, papers going out of business. Pittsburgh Press, where I used to write some things, died. The old world of print journalism, as we knew was going to happen, is fading.
Yeah.
Podcasts are all over the place; they compete, but nonetheless, they're a venue.
So do you see your role now is it education or is it influence? Because I think what you're describing is more education and let people, you know, put your argument out there. And but maybe I got that wrong.
Well, I'm lurching toward retirement this year. Uh, it's time. Not that my mind is blown or corroding away, but it's just time to let other people take charge. So I do see myself as being in that educational mission. What have I learned? How could I help mentor people, let others do things? That said, I can't shut up, so it's both.
Hmm.
Still out
Yeah.
there, right? As I said, I wrote a thing for Atlanta. I have another one coming out literally today on, that whole milk campaign. That
Hmm.
turns out the whole milk campaign is connected right back to Nazis and fascists. They've always been pushing
Hmm.
whole milk, partly as a drink that's pure white and good, partly as a drink that white people can handle dairy better than other racial groups, so we must be better because we have genes to digest dairy more than other groups do. It's a kind of a weird argument, but there it is. The alt right is using it all the time. And I think this promotion of whole milk is not quite as people might say it's the dairy industry pushing, but it may be, but it's kind of weird connection. I know that
Hmm.
because I've been writing about Nazism and science and medicine and fascist science and medicine as one of my areas for a long time. I'm not expecting students to know that. But if I know it, that's a place for me to jump in and say, I know something about this history. So sadly for the world, I don't think I'll shut up on the opinion
So
side.
what about AI? Because we talked about the internet and changing how people, consume information and what about AI? What are the challenges here from an ethics perspective?
Well, AI has one good thing. It'll keep the bioethics crowd busy for the next 20 years. So many issues. It's ridiculous. Not me, because some of them I'm not even up to being engaged. I don't hang out with the engineers and the AI people. I want my students to do that. But I think there are two major splits about AI ethics. One doesn't get enough attention, and that is the cost to the environment and health of building AI. So we've got a lot of these data centers popping up. They're gigantic, and they're changing the landscape, in my view, ruining it. But be that as it may, they suck up so much electricity that we don't have enough power. They're very inefficient. Everybody gets excited. These chips are great and it's wondrous. It's not wondrous if you have to build 9 football fields worth of chips to run your computer power. And also, by the way, suck up all the water for 200 miles to cool it down because it generates so much heat. They're very noisy. When the grid falls down, they rely on diesel and they pollute the entire area. They're environmental hazards. And there is an argument, I think, both for making the companies pay for them, rather all of us with more electric bills, which is what's happening now. The billionaires are having a fine time. They build a data center to your little community, and all of a sudden your electricity and water bills go crazy because they use it all. And trying to make sure that maybe before we build them, it would be nice to know if in 2 years we're going to have chips that are twice as good and require half the size and half the layout. It's like saying, I want to go to Mars, like Elon Musk keeps saying, but you can't go there right now with the technology we have without a pretty good chance that you'll be dead at the end of the trip from radiation. So I'd like to see us go to Mars. I'm not opposed to space exploration, but the technology isn't good enough. That could be true for AI right now. So that's a neglected part of this debate. I think everybody's worried about when the AI overlord robot's going to kill us because they think we're too stupid. I think they may just pollute us to death. We won't have to wait for them to become our giant bosses. There's some ethics issues about, do we want to download ourselves into computers? Do we want to have robot-human intersections? That's too far off. That's the 20-year question. Nobody cares about that now or shouldn't. It's too far away. We don't know what we're talking about. But AI, I'll give you 3 areas on the application side in health. One is, are we told when AI is used? I think you have a right to know if it's relevant to your care. I mean, some AI just deals with medical records and information moving around in the background. But if an AI is diagnosing you with cancer and there's no doctor around, I think you should know that. Second, who's liable? You have no malpractice rules for the AI bots who are doing psychotherapy or mental health care or whatever, dermatology online. It's basically practicing medicine without a license. And I think they should get licensed before they get to literally pass the test. Whatever the doc does that's human, your program better be able to do that before you get to practice medicine. And they're out there very quickly practicing medicine. The other big issue is handling confidentiality. AI can't do it. There's a leak a day, there's a break-in, there's a shutdown, there's an extortion. It's clear that your information is out there, and you better presume that. So I don't want to hear any more about all the rules that govern AI. I want people to presume that there is no privacy with AI, and what are the penalties for people who then misuse information. Don't tell me how you're going to protect it, because I don't think you can. Again, there's a breach and a leak and some gigantic dump of medical records at least once a month. It's absurd. And that's not even people trying to be bad. They're just can't handle it, or they have an accident or something. So we need criminal penalties if you hurt, Deborah's can't get insurance, or you told her something that her mother never wanted to know about, her horrible venereal diseases or whatever it is. You should get penalized, not pretend like it's never going to come out.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about AI and its impact on energy and if you look back on the chip manufacturing and just the mining of the material, the rare. I mean, it's a horrible human rights issue of what's going on.
Well, even there, we're going to have to take over Greenland because we need rare earth. I mean, it's in our politics. We want chemicals to make chips.
I mean, we need them, right? But it's the mining of the.
Oh, I'm with you. The extraction.
It's
I
crazy.
think people don't see that when they argue, for example, nuclear power versus coal. And nuclear power can really be bad, and we have no idea what to do with the waste still. So an accident is horrible. But the cost in human deaths mining coal, even when
Mm-hmm.
you get more automation, pollution of the surrounding rivers and runoff, destruction of the land. I mean, it's enormous cost just to
Yeah.
mine. When I see Trump yammering on about back to coal, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm not sure nuclear isn't better. I'm being agnostic here because I don't really know.
Right.
But coal, petroleum extraction, anybody drive through near Galveston, Texas to Humble or any of those places, it's like destroyed the whole environment. A leak of one of
Yeah.
these boats.
Yeah, I think you're bringing up because it is, there is a hope that, and you hear it, it's like, well, AI will help speed up diagnosis or understanding or, big databases that can find some of the answers about why or what. But when you pull that thread through all of that that system of systems question, it really is. It's a very complex. It's almost too much sometimes to even kind of think about. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really, it's just really, and we've just become even more and more kind of connected to everything. I'm
But by
wondering
the
when
way, we
you.
were talking about bioethics, paying attention to AI. Another development, which I'm not going to be part of, is bioethics paying attention to climate and environmental issues. They are emerging. I don't know enough about them, but there are younger people entering ethics who are not going to be hanging around the hospital. They might be hanging around at the public health department or the environmental protection agency or places where these impact on human health questions do get studied in all their delightful complexity.
Yeah, yeah. That the more and more we learn about our bodies, about our brains, about some of these diseases, the more and more it's kind of pointing back to the journey of life and in some of the environmental aspects of what we've done. So it's just. Yeah, it's complex. As you look back, is there an ethical issue that you think society just handled better than you would have expected? That it was the stars were aligned and we all kind of landed on that side of whatever
Yeah,
that.
I can think of two. One is we do much better with handling people who are in research. We establish the idea that you should get consent, not just lie to people and throw them in research, which was done in the 50s and 60s. And we also have more oversight, at least committees called institutional review boards or research ethics committees, independently check to see is the science sound, does the informed consent seem comprehensible, understandable. That's been good. It's cut back on abuses, not eliminated them, but better, much better. So that was an area where I think we've come out with some advances. Didn't have to solve whether there was an eternal principle of morality to guide this. It's just like tell people they're going to be in research. They have a right to know. Make sure they're competent so they can understand it, or someone will consent for them if they're a kid or have a mental illness or something. And vet the darn research by somebody who's not the researcher to make sure that they're not lying or don't have any conflict of interest in over hyping the need for it and that. So that turned out better. I also think we're doing a little better at end of life. It used to
Mm,
be you just died in the hospital and in your hospital bed. More home care, more palliative care, more ability to get hospice. These are all good developments. Hospice was a great addition to Europe and America in terms of how, in Canada, about how people die. We've supplemented that a little bit in some of the states, maybe 12 of them now, with the right to take a lethal dose of medicine if you're dying and you're in a lot of pain and suffering and you're competent, that has not been abused. It's not used a lot, but I think it's a tool that is good to have. New York and Illinois just allowed that very recently, but it's been in place in Oregon and Washington 20 years. It seems to work. So our end of life is better. It's better. We use more pain control. We have palliative care. As I said, we have hospice. It's a environment where people are trying to do one more operation on you with a 0.0001 chance of something happening. I think we need more of hospice. I think we need better home hospice. It's not this perfect, but it's better.
Yeah. So your career has spanned a whole bunch of administrations, a whole bunch of different kind of political perspectives. What when you're advising, or at least when you're out there trying to educate, influence policymaker, hospital leaders, insurance leaders, whoever they may be, what's the hardest truth that you sometimes have to tell them?
That having a healthcare system that doesn't cover basic healthcare for everyone is the underlying scandal of American health.
Say more.
You have 10% of people uninsured. You have probably another 20% in America underinsured. We spend 5 times as much as every other country in the world, and a huge number of our ethics problems come from that fact. We keep trying to rely on the market to solve our problems. Even Trump right now says, I have a health plan, I'm going to give everybody money to buy healthcare insurance. He doesn't even understand that isn't how healthcare insurance works. You're trying to pool your risks. If you just said to everybody, here's money, some of them are going to buy crappy plans that won't cover them when they get really sick because they don't think they're going to get really sick. And the only way you could actually pay for that is community pitching in to take care of the people who get really sick. Our healthcare is linked up to our jobs. That's absurd. Why would we ever get healthcare through our work? That's why we have so many uninsured people. Because America had this weird idea that you don't get healthcare insurance unless you deserve it. And what makes you deserve it? Working. Even now, people are saying, well, in Medicaid, we want to make sure there's a work requirement. You know who's eligible for Medicaid? Single head of household females, disabled people, children in very poor families, and people who are basically in nursing homes. I don't think it's a big workforce and a lot of need. So the truth is, for American discussion, so much of what we argue about spins out of the failure to do what every other country has done, which is to put everybody in a system of some kind, agree that not everybody has to get platinum care. We'll get a face transplant in a lot of these places, but you'll get your, gallbladder out and your bones will be put back together if you break them, and you'll get some basic mental health and dental care too, I might add, which nobody in America gets either. I mean, that's all private. And everybody's in. And we don't get it through work. You just pay for it, if you will, out of your income. And people who are poor get a subsidy. And that's it. And you have to have it. It's like car insurance. We have a better system for insuring our cars than we do ourselves, because I think every state mandates insurance before you can get a license plate on that car. And we even have a fine on all of us for uninsured motorists who somehow get through, but we all pay something for them to be involved with repairing the cars or the cost of car accidents. So I think I'd rather be a car than a person in the U.S. in terms of insurance.
Yeah, it's interesting because, if you go back hundreds of years, the question around, insurance or the ethics of who gets insured or how it is or is the market was never the question. It was, now we're so far down this road of the system, the process, the whatever it is. Maybe we can't go back and ask, is insurance just not ethical? Is the idea that of some of these things that we have.
Let me give one
you know,
reason to go back. Insurance, really, here's what it's for. Catastrophically bad events that rarely happen. So if you're running a boat shipping company, you buy insurance against one of my boats gets sunk. But you're not buying insurance to maintain the boat. You're not buying insurance so that there's a crew on the boat. Let me give you a similar thing. Everybody should get a colonoscopy starting at 40. But it's paid for by insurance. But everybody has to do it. You don't want to insure it. You want to pay for it in some. I expect this to happen. Everybody with a baby should have prenatal care. Everybody with a baby should have postnatal care. Every kid should be getting their vaccines. You know what I mean? These are
because those are some of the things that stop the catastrophic.
correct.
Right, it
Correct.
is a thing that stops the catastrophic,
And then they're not rare. They're predicted.
Yeah.
Everybody should do them. So you don't
Yeah.
handle that with a market insurance system. It's the wrong approach. Can we get rid of that? I don't know. But it's 50 years of failure so far. And the cost is out of control. And all they do is threaten to cut Medicare and Medicaid and the VA, the government programs, because the bills are too high. But the basic inefficiency is the at-risk catastrophic insurance model doesn't work for, if you will, health maintenance and the basic health things that you want to get. You want to pay somebody to go to the dentist once a year. It's not a risk. It's something they need.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you said you're in a personal transition. I can't imagine, like you said, you're not going to slow down and you're not going to stop. And
Well, I
maybe
don't
it's
golf,
just
so
yeah.
I have a lot of time there.
So you'll find out what spends your time. But looking forward in the next 5-10 years, what do you have? You guys some warnings? Do you have some hope? What do you think is what do we think we'll see around health ethics and bioethics?
Well, I think we're going to see a recognition that the current ethic of the current administration is wrong. They are too egotistical, too selfish, too motivated by self-interest. So when you see public officials, Kennedy or the Florida Surgeon General Lopado, I believe he says, they say the following: we're not going to vaccinate for measles because we respect freedom first, individual choice, and then people getting the measles, kids, is just a cost of freedom. That ethic is nuts. Totally wrong. You can't sacrifice children because you want to respect somebody's right to say no to vaccinating them, even if they're their parents. And I think that ethic is going to be shown to be false and faulty. Sometimes you want to have a community. Sometimes, what does it mean to have a community or friends or people in an area or patriotism if you don't care about your neighbor? Caring about your neighbor means sometimes you sacrifice for your neighbor morally. You restrict your freedom. I'm not going to drive 200 miles an hour through the neighborhood because I don't want to run over the kids. We kind of get that. We're going to put speed bumps up in some places to make sure you don't do that. You're going to get that. You're going to have to seatbelt your kid in a car seat in the back, and we don't care if you don't like doing that. You have to do that. Those are just examples of, or I can't drive drunk. I might choose to do it, but it's probably not good for others. I can't smoke if I bother others with smoke, that sort of thing. Respect for others should be core to our ethic. it's fallen away completely. We have our billionaires pursuing eternal life and greed and making money and setting up their own currencies, this cryptocurrency nonsense and all this. It's not a good ethic, and I think in 5 years, if you will, it will be showing it's very bare. It's not correct. I'm looking forward to that shift in sort of day-to-day morals, and I think it'll happen. If you have a few more measles outbreaks, it may be getting there, or just people saying, "I'm going to respect the rights of the mentally ill to stay outdoors when it's 3 degrees in New York City," and we get 16 people frozen to death. Yeah. Here's the ethic: you drag them in against their will, kicking and screaming, "I don't care," to a heat place. That's what a community does for its vulnerable. It doesn't go into a rights discussion. I call that rotting with your rights on. I mean, it's just not tolerable. So my prediction would be, I hope, that we get a emerging shift in our ethics. That's the thing I look forward to, hopefully, coming down the road as people, and maybe some ethicists will be writing about the need for that and the importance of that. We are living too individualistically, too worried about ourselves all the time, and why should I do something? What's in it for me kind of thing. And too much corruption. I mean, too much people say, well, I don't care about the rules. I'll do what it takes to make a lot of money, and I don't really care. And even the president is making billions while he's in office. We got to get an ethics shift.
I appreciate your time very much. You've given us a lot of background and really kind of knowledge to really delve deeper individually to really kind of understand and really kind of understand where we sit individually. How do we think about these these topics and what's going on in the headlines? So, Art, I really appreciate your time very, very much. I wish you the best of luck in whatever that is. I'm sure we're going to see you. Yeah. I think you'll find a nice balance, but I don't think you're going away.
Don't want to really go away. Just want to make sure that the younger folks get a little more power and authority. It's time they merit that. So sometimes the old has to make way for the new once in a while.
Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that they ride away in the sunset either.
Yeah. I agree with that too. You can still be around aggravating people.
Yeah. Well, how do people, if they want to have these conversations with you, how do they get in contact with you?
So you can do that in a couple of ways. I'm on Twitter at Arthur Caplan. You can follow me there. I'm on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. If you're really interested and you want to get on the mail list, just email me. It's Arthur, ARTHUR.Caplan with a C, CAPLAN at NYUMC for Medical Center.org, NYUMC.org. And I'll be happy to throw folks onto my mail list for all these op-eds and rantings and ravings.
I appreciate that, and we'll definitely put that in the post notes. So thank you again very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining Research Renaissance. For more information and to stay updated, subscribe for more episodes and visit our website at tofflertrust.org. Feel free to call us if you have any thoughts, suggestions, or just want to find out more about the Karen Toffler Charitable Trust. Until we meet again, onward and upward.